Hey, Hickok 45 here. You're looking at some grains of powder. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a little basics video, some information here on grains. A lot of questions, and you see postings about grains. Like we experienced shooters will refer just randomly to a 147 grain bullet or whatever it is, or cartridge. And you'll see questions occasionally from generally new shooters. Or non-shooters wondering, what do you mean by grains? You know, is that how much powder's in it? What are you talking about there? So I thought, rather than just a brief FAQ, we would get a little deeper into it. You know, what is a grain? What's it mean? Well, in the shooting world and reloading world, cartridge world, that is the unit of measurement that's used for a lot of things. This is a 405 grain bullet. That's 10 or 11 grains of powder you were just looking at. You had your face in that pan, didn't you? Hope you didn't get any of that on your nose. Powder is grains. You know, that's how we weigh things like that. So we talk about grains all the time. And I don't want to confuse you. I want to clarify for you. And as you can imagine, since you know, reloading, shooting, there's so much talk of grains, it is the unit of measurement that it's my favorite unit of measurement. In fact, I can tell you how many grains my car weighs. I have my bathroom scales set up on grains. You know, it shows me I weigh, I think it's 1,610 grains. You know, when I stand on that scale. You know, my wife doesn't like that too much. You know, big long number when she gets on there. But that's the downside. Upside is, someone asked me how much I can bench press. 2 million. You know. Anyway, a grain is a very small unit of measurement. That's the bottom line. Okay, now let me keep it simple and not get too silly for you new shooters and non-shooters. The bottom line is, first of all, when you see us talking, referring to grains, a particular bullet, cartridge, you know, somebody shooting, what are you shooting there? 230 grain bullet? Well, we're talking about the bullet, okay? Rarely is anybody ever talking about the powder, unless it's you know, some shooters and reloaders talking about their powder charge of a certain kind of powder. Just assume it's the bullet, okay? Because lead is lead. Powder is not powder. For one thing, you're never going to hear me or any experienced shooter or hand loader asking somebody, well, how many grains do you use in that cartridge? Because it varies. Like this powder, Winchester 231 is a powder I use. 5 grains of that is different from 5 grains of 2400, another common powder, and unique, one of the most common classic powders. So 5 grains of this is maybe a decent little load for a certain cartridge. 5 grains of this is not much. In fact, not even recommended probably for most standard pistols. 5 grains of this would be a little warmer than that. So, and then I could bring out, I don't really have a lot of faster, hotter burning powders, but there are other powders that are very common, whereas 5 grains of this would be really weak. But 5 grains of it, bullseye for example, would be really hot, maybe smoking hot, too hot for, you know, a given bullet, okay? And this is just 3 different powders. There are hundreds of powders, and every one is different. Look at my manual here. I just want to drag this out. For example, this manual, let me show you the cover real quick. This is the manual I bought in 1973, and I started reloading with it, okay? Still around, I keep it in the reloading room. See, these stats don't change for some of these old powders. But you see, for example, there's a 250 grain cast bullet, 44 Magnum, bullseye powder, just 4 grains. 2400 you see over there in that one can at 18 grains of it, or the starting amount. You know. And then here's the unique, I have a can of that there, 7 grains. I don't have any of these others, I guess. But you see the variance on the starting amount of powder. It's a wide range there. So, and that's just a few powders. So that's why no one just talks about how many grains of powder you would be using. So it would be crazy. It'd be dangerous. You wouldn't be talking about, you know, amount of powder as if it's all the same. Now with black powder, back in the old days, you know, or even now, if you're loading black powder, you know, you could do that, I guess. If you're talking about the same, like 2F or 3F or 4F, you know, the same granule size or something, you know, not quite as serious there. But with powder, no one's talking about how many grains, or Yeah, I bought some 45 ACP yesterday. I think it was 200 200 grain loads or 200 grain rounds or something. Someone's ever saying that, you're hearing that, they're talking about the bullet weight. They're talking about the bullet, this, okay? That's all they'd be talking about. They would not be talking about the powder, okay? Too many different kinds of powder. You'd have to specify powder. All right, now if a buddy and I were talking about a specific powder, we were comparing loads and talking about what load we wanted to use. We'll say 2400. It's pretty popular for 44 Magnum, for example, and we're loading 240 grain bullets. We could have a conversation like that, and then we'd know what we're talking about. That would be different. We could be arguing about, well, Elmer Keith liked 22 grains or 24 grains of 2400. I'm loading 22. You're loading 18 grains. We could have this big conversation about powder grains, but that'd be about the only context in which you would hear that, or maybe online in a reloading forum or something. And again, you'd have to know there'd be some consistency. We're talking about a specific cartridge, a specific bullet weight maybe even, and then we're having a conversation about how many grains of powder. But that's really the only time, okay? So again, the bottom line, anytime you hear us talking about a grain, someone's going to pick up some bullets, or you're reading on the cartridge box how many grains this is, it's the bullet weight. For example, there's some 45. Let me put these back, kind of take a look at, you got, where's my pointer? There it is, that 8mm. You've got, these are 357 Magnum, you got 158 grains. See, that's the bullet weight that's in the case. You've got 45s there, they're 230 grains. There's some 9mm there that are 147 grain. Got some blackout, the UMCs are 115 grain bullets. Those are the ones I was pulling out of the barrel. I think I misspoke on that. I think I thought they were 123, but they're 115 grain. And those are 180 grain 40 Smith & Wesson. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about grain. We're talking about the weight of these babies right here. Whatever caliber it is, whatever bullet it is, whether it's jacketed, whether it's a hollow point, whether it's a hard cast bullet, whatever it is, that's generally what we're talking about. And that's the thing I want to really make sure we get straight, okay? And then I'll go a little bit deeper than that. No one's ever talking about the grainage of powder, hardly ever, okay? So we got that established. Now, why is that? Because maybe in your life, you've never heard anybody talk about grains. You're not from a shooting family. And, where's that come from? We didn't talk a lot about that in math class or necessarily. Well, the reasoning for it, again, you've got about, we got about, I don't know, 10 or 11 grains of powder, in this little bowl. I'm just going to dump it out. I think I forgot which one it was from there. I think it was unique maybe. But so that was about 11 grains of powder. That's not much weight, is it? Can we talk about ounces when we're weighing powder? Or even bullets, some really light bullets? Now, I think the lightest bullet I have, well, here's this in the case, but that's a 223 5.56. That's about a 55 grain bullet. Now, that's not very heavy, 55 grains. So you can't talk in terms of ounces. Most things we're talking about how much your hammer weighs, your claw hammer, your sledgehammer, your tire. You can talk about it in ounces or pounds, can't you? How much a chair weighs, even how much your shoes weigh. They're going to weigh ounces or a pound or two or three or something. See, or a gun. We're always comparing guns like this PPKS. I don't know how much that weighs, 20 ounces, 25 ounces or something. We talk about it with firearms, don't we? Well, with bullets, they're so far down the scale that we use grains. We need a smaller unit of measurement. It's just that simple. And with powder, even a smaller. That's the other thing. Even the lightest bullet that we'd be talking about in terms of how much it weighs, it's going to weigh more than any powder charge almost that we'd be talking about. See, that's another difference, okay? Yes, we're talking about bullet when we're talking about grains and when we're reading what's on the box. And then also, generally with powder charges, so many of them are like 3.5 grains or 5.6 grains or 10 grains, So there aren't many bullets that weigh that small amount. Even a 22, long rifle is usually like 34, 36 grains or 40 grains, 223. 55 grains. Those are usually the lightest bullets that I can think of right offhand. And then right on up, a 9mm is 115 grains or 147 grains, 124 grains, that's a 9mm. 38s are usually 158 grains, 125 grains. So that'd be a lot of powder, Even this 4570 case, and these old cartridges, I don't want to confuse you by going to but even these old cases, that was called 4570, partly because it would hold 40, it was a 45 caliber and was loaded with 70 grains of black powder. But that's pretty unique. Now, as far as modern powders, you can get pretty much powder in a big old case like that, maybe 30 grains of powder, okay? That's a huge case, see? And there just aren't many actual bullets that would be 30 grains. Again, measure the amount of powder that it would take for a warm load in that case. So most powders, say 30 grains, that's lighter than even this little bitty 22 bullet, see? Okay? So we're talking about two different major categories there. So just again, further evidence that we're not talking about the weight of the powder. It'd be a much smaller number. Anybody's talking about 230 grains of powder, which is a common 45 ACP bullet. Man, you're talking about a lot of powder if that's powder. All right, so that's it. Now, to give you an idea, this is an old school scale. It's actually the one I still use when I weigh powder. Here's a penny. Now, I think we've got windage issues here. Let's see how much that penny weighs. For example, if you're going to weigh a penny, you'd probably have to do it in terms of grains. Yeah, it's going to be about 50 grains. Let's put that back on 0. Yeah, somewhere in the area of 50 grains, it looks like. Okay, so that gives you an idea. A penny is about 50 grains. So that's a long way from an ounce. There are 7,000 grains in a pound, for example. Okay, you can do the math, and some people do that when you're getting into reloading. Some people base the powder they use on how much it's going to cost them. For example, I was telling you earlier that 2400 uses more powder. You saw, maybe remember from the manual here, like you're using 18 or 20 grains of this. It's on loads of 44. That's a lot of powder in terms of weight, but it's just the nature of this type of powder. It takes more of it. So some people don't use this because it's more expensive. Pound of powder runs around the same amount, maybe 20 bucks, let's say, give or take $2 or $3. And so you can do the math. If it takes 20 grains of this, then you can just get your calculator out and see how many rounds you could load with a pound of that. There's 7,000 grains in a pound. Whereas with another powder like Winchester, it takes less, about 5 or 6 grains maybe, to equal the same amount of power. Well, you still got 7,000 grains in a pound, and these come in pound containers generally. So you could load 3 or 4 times as many rounds with this powder. Now your next question is, well, why wouldn't you use this powder all the time? All these powders have different properties, and that's for another video maybe. Some are dirtier, some are just more bulky, and some are designed for hotter rounds, some are designed for heavier cartridges, bullets, and that's just a different story altogether that we won't get too deeply into that. So 7,000 grains in a pound. So we're talking about a small unit of measurement, and that's why you have little scales like this, and you have to have something that would weigh even a paper clip. There's a paper clip. Let's see if we can even weigh that. Oh, it's not a paper clip, it's a staple. I think I know the difference. This is going to weigh about, there's a tenth. No, it's one grain. Let's see. 2 grains. It's like the staple is going to weigh around 3 grains maybe. This thing freed up here in the wind. Yeah, somewhere between 2 and 3 grains. See, so how else are you going to talk about how much a paper clip weighs? Now I know it's not a bullet, but it's similar to powder. There are powder charges in that vicinity, so you can't use ounces. You'd be talking about a hundredth of an ounce. It'd be crazy. So grains is a unit of measurement. You need a small unit of measurement to talk about bullets and powder, and that's where it comes from. What's on the box, what people are talking about, is the bullet weight, the weight of the bullet, because that makes a difference. We don't know about the powder. I couldn't even tell you what powder any of these factory loads use. I don't know, so I wouldn't be talking about the powder grain. Don't even know how many grains are in there. Don't know what kind of powder they even use. So we're never talking about that, okay? We're strictly talking about the weight of the bullet, and that does make a difference, doesn't it? Why do we talk about that? Well, I kind of like heavy bullets for caliber. I like 147 grain 9mm. You can tell a difference in point of impact sometimes, the way they feel in recoil. I like a 230 grain 45 ACP, for example. Some people shoot a 200 grain bullet in 45 ACP, especially in competition. They get a different kind of recoil, a faster bullet, lower trajectory. There's all kinds of reasons for it, but people like different weight bullets. And of course, we have all the arguments that people have the bullet religion issue, you know, which one's better, you know, heavier, lighter, mid-range and all that. But it's the bullet we're talking about and how much it weighs, and it's measured in grains. And hopefully that kind of clarifies it for you, and maybe even gives some of you a little more information about it than you wanted, right? So we're talking about the bullet when we're talking about grains, the bottom line. And I went the long way around the barn to explain it maybe, but I enjoyed doing it. Life is pretty good.